weekly webinar. We are live streamed on YouTube. I know we've taken a break, but we're back to bring you the latest and greatest strategies and tips on your immigration filings. Now, let's give people a few minutes to join. I know it's going to take some time to get back into the whole practice of remembering we have these weekly webinars. But as 2022 starts, I think it's important that we hit with some highlights and to ensure that, we've got you on the right track and we're equipping you with all the information and strategies you need to ensure that you achieve your immigration objective. So let's get started with some questions that we've received a lot regarding, EADs, employment authorization. And it's very interesting. So some of the updates are really good. So for E's and L's, where the dependents on an L2 or an E2 would have to, the dependents on the L and E would have to apply for work authorization. Now it is work authorization with status, so incident to status. What does that mean? That means that L's and E dependents no longer have to apply for work authorization. It is based on their status that they get work authorization, which is great. And when they did the automatic revalidation for EADs, for some reason, they left out H4s. Now with H4s, it gets a little complicated. You still have to apply for EAD because remember, you're only eligible for an EAD on an H4 once the I-140 has been approved for your spouse. But if you are applying for an employment authorization card to renew your H4 EAD before it expires, and you have an unexpired I-94 card that shows that your status is extended, then the automatic extension will continue until the earlier of the end date showing the validity of your status or the approval of your EAD extension or 180 days. So the 180 days is maximum you can get. So it would be the earlier of, but if your I-94 card is only valid for 30 more days, then you wouldn't be eligible for the full 180-day automatic extension. So what a lot of people are doing is they're filing the, if they have a valid visa, and let's say their I-94 is shorter because God knows sometimes it's that way because your passport validity or a number of things. If their visa is valid, you can go outside the US and come back in with a new I-94 card. Another idea is if your spouse has applied for an H-1B extension and they've done it premium processing, because you can do that 6 months in advance of expiration. The H4, has a valid visa. They can go outside the US, return, show the approval of the H-1B, and get an H4 I-94 card for the period of that validity. So you would be able to get the 180 days. What happens if you don't have a visa? Well, if you don't have a visa, one of the things you could do is go to the Dropbox. If you had processed your original H4 in that country, you are eligible for Dropbox. And we've got links to, who's eligible, what the process and procedures are for a lockbox on one of our YouTube videos. So that's another way in which you could, leverage it. And there are, people will still have to comply with all the issues related to I-9. So I-9 is the mechanism which an employer confirms the employment authorized status of an employee. So some of the things that they would do would be, and they're still trying to work out some of the kinks for this, but you would show a combination of your unexpired I-94 card, a combination of the receipt notice for the extension application, and a facially expired EAD that's been issued for the same category. Could be one form of work authorization. For E's and L dependents, they just need to show that because it's incident to status, they don't really have to have an I-796 EAD. They just show their I-94 card, and they could utilize that for their employment authorization, along with, so their list A, list B, list C docs. So list A are documents that show not only identity, but also employment authorized status. List B and list C docs show, one shows identity and one shows employment authorized status. So if you don't have a list A doc, you would pick from a list B and C doc. So since an I-94 card does not have an identity, you could use a driver's license, copy of your passport, whatever the documents that are listed to show your identity, and your I-94 card. So that is the quick and overview of the employment authorization documents, which are, the sum and substance of the great deal of questions we had. But today I thought we would just use this time where I could answer your questions as we're getting back into the flow of our weekly webinars. A couple of weekly webinars that we're going to have coming up, as April Fool's Day is around the corner, and you know what that means in the immigration world? H-1B season. Appropriately, H-1B season for the lottery. And remember, there's pre-registration. It's coming up March 16th. And the filings will begin April 1st. So we're going to have a series of webinars. One is going to be about how to craft a successful H-1B petition. What's the process? What are some things that are happening right now in the landscape where you've got to look out for the trends? Because a lot of times for immigration, it doesn't change. It's not changed through regulation, but it's changed through adjudication. So it all depends on what the adjudicated trends are, and you need to make sure you modify your petition accordingly. So we will be looking at those trends for filings. And then for HR employers or managers, we're going to be doing a compliance session so that they'll know what they exactly need to do once the petition's been filed, and what are the obligations for the employer during this process. So look out for those dates. If you have not followed us on social media, I would encourage you to do so. I've got a new computer, so I don't have that PowerPoint up and ready with the QR codes, but we will have it. I'll have it in the next go round. I'm sure my team will put the links in. There are different ways that you can connect with us to make sure that you are equipped to get all the information. There's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We also have a number of YouTube videos, and we're getting ready to contract out with an individual who's going to help us construct more and more videos that can be short and, have the ability to give you just bits of information that may be helpful. So if you like some of our YouTube videos, please subscribe, share it with your friends, share the link to these weekly webinars with your friends, because there's so many people that are struggling to find the answers, it's always good to have a second opinion and have some guidance to your immigration journey. After all, you're the captain of that ship. Even though you may not be able to control some of it, if you're an employment-based category, you should still be well informed so that you can drive and direct that journey without being driven into something that could be problematic for you down the road. Another thing is our Telegram group. We've got a great group of folks on Telegram, and you could just sign up to our Telegram group and be part of a community that's going through a very similar process that you are. So without further ado, let's get started. And I'll ask our moderator to present himself so that we can go ahead with the Q&A. And remember, put your questions in the chat box and not the Q&A box, right? The Q&A box and not the chat box. And if there's any follow-up, you can put it in the chat box. I think I said it right. I may not have Shaker, so.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Lakshmi.
Can't hear you.
Hi. Muted. Can you hear me now?
It may have gone to your Bluetooth, so you're going to have to check your settings.
The speaker, microphone, same as.
I can hear you, Shaker.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, good. All right. I believe, is that Lainey or Ashley? Who are the one who said, can you hear me?
It's Lainey.
Lainey. So they can hear me, I believe. So can you not hear me, Lakshmi? Everybody else can.
I can't hear you.
Well, Lainey, you put it in the chat that you're able to hear. So if I can't, if she can't hear me, can you ask her if she can hear you? Maybe you do the questions this time.
Lakshmi, can you hear me? I think the volume is turned down on her computer.
Put a thing in the chat.
Okay. I've got the volume up.
Can you hear us?
So oh, Hannah says that she can hear you. Everybody else can hear you. I don't know why I can't hear you.
But important thing is.
Well, hold on. Let me check my audio settings. Mine may have.
Did everybody out there can hear me? Amit Pandey, Harish, Hubert. Let me get a acknowledgement.
Okay, here we go. It had picked the wrong speaker.
Okay.
So now I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Why am I hearing myself? Okay. Now I'm not.
Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So it's very exciting that we are back. And as usual, it's very exciting. The cricket season started again. And today, the first game, India just won against West Indies in Eden Gardens, Calcutta. It's been a while since I've seen Eden Gardens, Calcutta, the second largest stadium in the world after Melbourne Cricket Club, something that is still on my bucket list. And Lord's, the most famous cricket field in the world. All right, let's get on with business. Cricket is here to stay. I'm excited from April 4th. The IPL is starting. And you got 2 new teams this year. Let me get on with the questions on the Q&A box. There are some questions in the chat. As usual, I would appreciate if you just limit your questions into the Q&A box and leave the chat for any responses your attorney wants to know when she's answering. First one today, Kiran Mangalampalli. Good afternoon. He says, good afternoon, madam. I have a question about the waiver H-1B stamping. As the recent rule says, no need of in-person interview for stamping. I had my first H-1B visa stamped in passport from 2014 to 2016. So will the waiver applicable for me?
Yeah, well, if you get it in the same country, there's certain parameters that you have to follow. And I know that we've got an article on this, so we'll put the article about the interview waiver in the chat so you can have that as a resource.
All right, next one is from Harish. He says, my wife is having a valid H-1 visa, but she came to US as H-4. Can she convert to H-1 without visiting back to India?
Right, so that's a good question. And so what you all have to remember is you don't need a visa to reside in the United States. You only need a visa to enter the United States. It's an entry document. So you can change status in the US from an H-4 to an H-1 if she's had the H-1 in the past 6 years without being subject to the cap. Absolutely.
Okay, next question is from Kranti Viranki. My wife and I have two separate 140s approved with her PD as December 19, 2012 and mine as May 13, 2013. I downgraded in October 2020 to EAD and filed her as my derivative. And we both got EAD AP combo card with 2 years validity and biometrics were done too. We haven't used the cards yet. And my PD of June 13, 2013 retrogressed in November 2021 bulletin. So his question continued. However, my wife's, whose EB2 I-140 with PD 12/2012 became current in final action date, and we filed AOS for both of us. And this time, I was filed as her derivative, and last week we received 485J notice. My question is, do we have to withdraw my EB3 downgrade 485 application for both of us? Can we use the EAD AP, which we got from my EB3 downgrade? Will having multiple 485 applications impact the timeline of our case in EB2?
Right. So what they will most likely do, the regulations state you can only adjust on one I-485. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a couple pending. What likely will happen is when your 485 is getting close to being adjudicated, the USCIS will ask you to pick, and then you can withdraw the other. So you can utilize your EAD. The thing with utilizing an EAD to work for someone other than your H-1B employer, if you're still on an H-1B, because remember, H-1B and Ls are dual intent. So you can intend to reside here temporarily, and you can intend to reside here permanently. So you can have an H-1B visa along with have the status of an adjustee at the same time. Now, you can use your EAD and AP to work for your current H-1B employer without any issue, The H-4s can work for whoever they want because they're dependent. So that doesn't matter. The only restriction is if you use your EAD to work for an employer other than your H-1B employer, your H-1B will no longer be valid.
I'm just trying to see the timestamp on the chat, but as usual, please do put your questions in the Q&A box. Next one is from Ritesh Kumar. He says, for H-4 EAD 180 days rule, will the H-4 spouse get 180-day rule benefit if H-4 employee got H-4 extension approved until May 23, May 2023 as part of H-1B transfer with her spouse. Her current H-4 EAD is expiring in February 2022. She applied for renewal for H-4 EAD in November 21 and is pending. Her I-94 for H-4 extension is valid till May 2023. Will she be eligible for this new rule benefit as her I-94 is valid?
Yeah, so as I
Man,
said,
there are so many dates and
yeah, so the rule is this, that you get an automatic extension for 180 days, depending upon the earlier date of 180 days from the expiration of your current EAD. That's the longest. If your I-94 card if the H-4's I-94 card is shorter than 180 days, that would be the one that would govern. So because your spouse's I-94 card is beyond the 180 days, it's almost a year beyond the 180 days, they would get the 180 days, or if the EAD is adjudicated, the date the new EAD is issued.
Okay. Next one is from Srini Vemulapalli. Thank you for doing webinars. Very informative again. Thank you. Do you have any outlook around visitors visa from India?
Well, we have been seeing that there are people that are getting appointments. We've seen that trend from, I would say, the end of December till now, that more and more appointments are being issued. There are ways in which, if a person's visit to the United States is within the national interest categories, of course, you can try to get an expedite for those. And we'll put a link in our chat with our YouTube video that talks about how to get an expedite. But we are seeing them open up a little bit.
Next one is from an anonymous attendee. I downgraded from EB2 to EB3 in October 2020. My EB2 I-140 is still valid and I'm with the same company and role. My EB2 PD might get current in the next visa bulletin. Should I do the interfile or wait?
I think now with the interfile rules, they've got more direction, and they state that you have to wait till, before you didn't have to wait till it was current, but I believe now you do. And I think we have some guidance on that, and we'll try to put that in the, I don't know if Lainey is putting it in the Q&A or she's putting it in the chat.
She's putting in the chat.
Okay.
All the links is on the chat. Quite a
Okay.
good number of links that our team is posting in the chat. So please make use of all the links.
Okay, great.
All right, next question from another AA. Can a primary leave country for 1 year and dependent still be in US?
Will the primary still be on their status?
Will still be in US on pending 485. Can a primary leave country for 1 year and dependent still be in US on pending 485? I presume it's the same person asking this question.
Yeah, and they're adjustees as well as, so that would be their status as an adjustee. The only problem that would come about is if, for whatever reason, the adjustment gets denied, they wouldn't have any status to fall back on. But yes, they can stay in the United States.
Okay. Next one, Suresh Kukalakuntla. Hi, Lakshmi Garu. My priority dates in March 7, 2013, which is current in EB2 for March bulletin. We filed EB3 downgrade during October 2020. Both myself and spouse got EADs approved this week. EB3 I-140 approved under PP. Recently, company got acquired by another company as successor in interest. For interfiling to EB2, does the EB2 I-140 has to be amended? I heard some members in some situation had success interfiling without EB2 amendment. Please suggest.
If your I-140 was approved and your adjustments pending for 180 days, technically speaking, you shouldn't have to file an amendment. I would always do that just to be safe because it's same or similar employment. You can even change employers. So the fact that your company was acquired shouldn't be a problem. I would do an I-45J and do the interfiling.
All right, next one is from another AA. Applied for H-1B, H-4, and EAD concurrently, premium processing in January 2022. H-1B got approved in 5 days. H-4 EAD is still pending. Planning to travel international for visa stamping, Dropbox, before current visa expiry in June 2022. Excuse me. What will happen to H-4 and EAD renewal applications already in progress? Should we apply for new I-765 application for EAD upon return or send updated I-94 docs to USCIS? Please suggest the process to update to USCIS after return to US. Thanks a lot.
Right. So if you are filing, if you travel outside the United States while your extension and EAD is pending, there have been cases where the USCIS, your extension is okay. It's okay to travel outside the US when an extension is pending, but there are situations where they will deem your EAD abandoned. So you may have to come back and apply. But remember, if this is not the first EAD and this is an extension, you may be able to leverage the automatic extension of EADs if it's still valid. If the EAD, if you travel while the EAD is still valid, and the spouse returns with a new I-94 card.
I'm just checking whether the question in the chat is also on the. All right, next one is Prasad Karkanis. Hello, hi. My wife is a USC and will be sponsoring my I-130 petition with concurrent I-485 filing. And I'm in the US on an H-1B. My employer is going to file for my H-1B extension later this year. Would that adversely affect, oops, what happened to the thing? Would that adversely affect the I-130 filing or the other way around? Thank you.
Neither. Remember, H's are dual intent, so you can tend to reside here temporarily and intend to reside here permanently. If you were on an F, that, or another non-immigrant status that does not lend itself to dual intent, that would be problematic. But on the H-1B, there's no issue. Either way, does not impact your I-130, does not impact your ability to get an H-1B extension.
He said, my wife is a USC. So I thought USC, University of Southern California, University of South Carolina. Then after, I realized that I think my wife is a US citizen. Probably.
Right. In this world, Shaker, it's not everything's about football and basketball. So in this world, USC means immigration.
All right. Next one, V. Dattani. Hello, first time on the webinar. Welcome. I know this may have been asked a million times. What would be the approximate time frame for a green card grant if I apply for an EB2 today? Indian origin plus Australian citizen. Australian citizen, wow.
Well, it depends. Remember, it's your priority date is dictated by your country of birth, not your citizenship, your country of birth. So in terms of timelines for new applications, what is taking the longest right now, and we're going to have a webinar on how employers can, things the employers can do to expedite their perm process. But the longest time frame is the prevailing wage documentation, which is taking 9 months. I, for one, am not initiating a perm until I get the prevailing wage, and I'll tell you why. We don't know when it's going to come in. And there's all sorts of timelines you work with when you're working on a perm. You've got the first advertising cannot be greater than 180 days. You've got that 180 days window. So you've got all those jurisdictional requirements in between. And if one of them is that, one of the recruitment mechanisms has to take place within that 180 timeframe. I mean, within the validity of the prevailing wage. So with all of that, it's hard to really, before we would know, boom, 6 weeks, we'd get a PWD. So we could go ahead and get started with the perm process. Now I'm a little bit concerned. So you take about 9 months for the PWD, 3 months to do all the other recruitment steps. So that's 12 months. And I think it's currently taking about 6 to 7 months to adjudicate is the total time frame for getting a perm certified. Then you can file your I-140. You can do that in premium processing. And remember, if you structure your perm in the right way, you can file both the EB2 and the EB3 premium processing. So you'll have both an EB2 and an EB3 for the same employer. And you can do that in premium processing because they will have the original perm, at least with one of the applications. So that's something to think about.
All right. Because my friend is back on chat. Sweet seller. I have no idea. In current VB, it says that corrective action may be needed on EB2 if sufficient demand materialized in EB5. Can you elaborate on this point, please? Does it mean retrogression?
Well, remember, and there's so many factors that go into the visa bulletin. And we have a really nice webinar where I kind of demystify the process. But to give you a small snippet of what that complex process is like, you've got the overseas immigrant petitions that are being issued. Remember that there is a certain number of immigrant visas allotted per country. And of those per country, it gets broken down further into the various EB categories. And so depending upon how those slots are being allocated, that's why EB3 was pushed up a year ago, is because EB3 was underutilized. And so they pushed up the EB3, and then everybody started EB2 advanced. So they all kind of work together. And there are a couple of things in play. One is the dates for China. And so, because those are moving. And then with the EB5, remember there's the reauthorization, and I'm glad you asked this question. The reauthorization of the EB5 program is on Congress's radar and may be part of the greater budget reconciliation. Right now, EB5 direct investment on an EB5 in a targeted employment area is $500,000. As part of Congress's reauthorization of the regional center EB5, they may up the core investment, at least to 700,000 is what the murmurs are. So that's something to think about. But that is the interplay.
I think finally the sweet seller name is Raju, I think, because it's in the same chat. He's asking another question. As I'm planning to change organization, is it the right time, and any predictions for EB2 PD June 30th, 2014 for the September 2022?
No, I think we'll probably get a better idea second quarter. When the second quarter numbers come in, then we can see how the USCIS, who has promised that they would streamline and try to reduce their backlogs, how that's coming about. But when you say you're thinking of changing employers, as long as your I-140 is approved, your I-485 has been pending 180 days, and you're working in the same or similar employment, you should have no problem.
Next one is from Ritesh Kumar. My wife entered US this month on EAD AP combo card. Her new I-94 is valid till January 2023, 1 year, while her AP was valid till April 2023. Does she need to exit US before the expiration of her current I-94? Also, will the H-1B, H-4 extension change her back to H-4 status?
No, because remember, like I said, you can hold two statuses as an H-1B and H-4, the H category, H-1B or H-4. You can be an adjustee, and you can also be a non-immigrant H-4 status. So extending the H-4 will no way impact her adjustment. Doing anything on the adjustment will not impact her ability to get the H-4 extension.
Our next one is from AA. My friend's EAD AP is approved, but not for his dependent. He had to travel to India in emergency and planning to come back using AP. In this case, what will happen to dependent status? Can they continue on H-4? It is a EAD renewal.
Yes. And if it's an EAD renewal, remember what I said earlier about leveraging the 180 days. So it's whatever comes first. The expiration of your I-94, H-4 I-94, the 180 days, or the approval of the EAD renewal.
All right. Question from, I think I just wanted to acknowledge if Sweet Seller is indeed Raju. It said, the questions are from YouTube. So we thank all the YouTube viewers.
Yes,
and
thank you,
listeners.
YouTube viewers. Please spread the word and have, let's get some more YouTube folks on our webinars.
All right, next one is from Vikram. Is there any guidance on how USCIS will handle the interfile cases? Interfile letter plus I-485J filed to the new CA address. What happens after we send in the interfile request is still not clear, especially from a timeline perspective. We have not seen them issue any receipts for I-485J applications to the CA address as yet. Whereas if you would have sent 485J directly to the service center, one would have received a receipt notice within a week.
Well, sir, I hope you're part of our Telegram group. That is something that's an article that I'm writing right now that we should be posting either today or tomorrow. So there are some best practices, and we'll also have some information in there about how they're handling this new process, how the USCIS is handling this new process, and when people can expect notifications.
Okay. There's a Hubert Johansson from all the way from Sweden. I hope Sweden won some medals in the Winter Olympics. I'm sure they did. But welcome. What is the processing time of E2 visas? Has the processing time changed now due to COVID, or is it back to normal? I live in Sweden, and chat is always a challenge. I live in Sweden, and the embassy seems to be closed for applicants.
Well, that's a great question. E2s are actually pretty fast. You can do them one of two ways, depending upon the country of origin. You can either process directly at the embassy, or you can file for an approval for the USCIS in the United States, and then maybe go to a third country to process the E2. We've got some people that are thinking about processing the E2 out of Mexico because they're getting the visa appointments sooner in Mexico. So we would be happy, email us at info@challalaw.com, and we would be happy to give you some information about this individual that actually helps people obtain appointments in Mexico and other things. And I had one individual who was living in one country, but he had ties to another. That country actually processed E2s faster, so we had him process out of that country. But you've got to show a nexus. The only exception to that is Canada and Mexico.
As a I don't know, it's a Mr. or me, or V. Dattani, a follow-up question. He says, thank you for, he or she, thank you for answering my question. Just a quick follow-up on the answer. What would be the total approximate time frame from starting today to being granted a green card, Indian origin, EB2 or EB3?
Right. So, I told you what the time frame was for getting the I-140. To get the 485, right now, you can see what the time frame is on the visa bulletin. Unless Congress makes a change, we're still looking at lengthy timelines.
All right. Next question from the chat, Hardik Panchals. Do they have any update yet on U visas? I have a friend who has a pending U visa. He has already, this chat is always, he has already got the work permit, biometric appointments that he's going to attend next month or so. He's yet waiting for the U visa to become current.
Right. I know there's a tremendous backlog for U visas, and that's unfortunate, but it does provide, for those of you who don't know, a U visa is issued to those people who have witnessed certain crimes that are outlined in the regulations. And they were able to obtain a signature from either a law enforcement or a judge saying that they were helpful in the furtherance of investigating that crime. So that has been a big problem, is the backlogs for U visas. And I haven't even seen it on anyone's radar because there are backlogs everywhere. And so, but we will be checking on that, because we've done a number of U visas. And, if you have been a witness to or been subjected to a certain type of crime, you think that they would at least try to make the victims or the people who were exposed to the trauma of that crime process a little bit easier.
All right, next question. I think we had to answer something similar, but maybe not, I don't know. My EAD AP is approved, but not for my dependent. I'm traveling to India and planning to come back using AP. In this case, what will happen to my dependent status? Can they continue on H4?
Yes, I think we did answer that question.
Okay. All right. Vikram says, thanks for taking my questions. Could you please post a link to join the Challa Law Telegram? I think Lainey had just put in that.
Yeah,
link,
and it's called the
so-
H-1B Telegram, but it's not just about H-1Bs. It's
Yeah.
H-1Bs, I-140s, I-485s.
And then she also posted an E3 Telegram group too. So all the E3 folks can
Yeah,
join
E3
there.
is kind of a specialized group because they have very particular concerns and needs. So
All right. We take the last question here from Q&A from an AA. Thanks for the webinar and all your help. I'm saying that, and one more question came. H4 and EAD renewal is still pending with USCIS. Can we travel for Dropbox appointment and get updated I-94? If yes, should we apply for a new H4 EAD renewal application after new I-94, or just send updated I-94 to USCIS on the pending I-765
Yep.
renewal application?
if you depart, they would deem your EAD abandoned in most cases. Sometimes they allow, they don't keep track of it. That's the only thing I can sense. But if you do the Dropbox and you come back and she's still eligible for the extension, then you just file for an extension. You remember, this only applies to extensions. So that means in and of itself that the underlying EAD has to be valid. You can't extend something that is expired. You apply for something that is expired, but you can only extend something that is still valid. So if your EAD is still valid by the time you return with a new I-94 card, just file a new EAD.
There's a question from the chat. Mr. Sweetseller or Miss Sweetseller, I'm not sure. If Meng amendment is passed along with the main bill, not sure of the name of the upcoming bill, will EB2 and EB3 retrogress immediately? What are the chances of Meng passing?
Yeah, I don't know if the Ming bill is going to pass. I don't even think the Ming bill is the right solution, quite frankly. But they're really, there was some talk early on about addressing the backlog and recapturing. Maybe when we come closer to their bigger things that they're trying to deal with right now. So I think when we get closer to that time frame, we may hear of some, but right now I have not heard very much on the immigration side.
Well, that's all the questions. Before I give it to Lakshmi, I just want to remind everybody about the EB5 visa. As many of you know, that I involved directly on the initial talks. If anybody is interested in the EB5, the regional center program is right now currently suspended, but there's some likelihood, as Lakshmi said, some rumors, it may be renewed, and at that time, the investment amount can go up. But if you are interested in EB5, you can invest as a direct EB5 investor into a project that was originally started as a regional center project. So there's been some changes made, and it is authorized, perfectly acceptable to the US government, that you can invest as a direct EB5 into that project. So if you're interested, let me know. I got a couple of projects. I'll send you more information. Send your email to info@challalaw.com. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes. Yes. Direct EB5 is live and well. And so the regulations for direct EB5 are a little bit different, the requirements, than a regional center. So it's always important to make sure that the regional center, is modified, the documents and the supporting documents, and the role of the investor is modified to accommodate direct EB5 regulations. So that's just a tip from me to you to make sure that, not all centers are doing that. So if a regional center says, yeah, you can do an EB5 direct investment, those are some of the things that you would have to investigate before going forward. And hope to see you guys next week, next Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to have some stats for you about how many adjustments are pending, some of the immigration stats that are really helpful to understand what the current landscape is and how processing times are. So don't forget to join us next week. Share the link with your friends. And let's see, we had about 20 people here today. I would love it if we can get about 40 people next week. So if each one of you invite one friend, we can double the love that's in this webinar.
I just want you to answer one last question that just came in. I didn't want him to. Hardik Panchal says, if you have a U visa pending, can they stop you from coming back to the United States on a business B1 visa? This person left USA while getting into an attack while traveling on a business visa. He filed for a U visa before leaving. I don't know what an attack is, but
Well, if he had filed as a change of status, that U visa, at least the change of status part would be abandoned. They'll still adjudicate the underlying U. And yes, he should be able to come back as a business visitor.
all right, thank you all. And I'll see you next week.
Next week.
All right, take care.
Have a great weekend. And
Have a great weekend,
thank you for reconnecting. It's been a while. I'm glad to be back with all of you.